Thank you for staying with us. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has presented the proposed 2025 budget to the National Assembly with 3.5 trillion naira allocated to the education sector. Now, this budget highlights the government's focus on improving education, healthcare, and infrastructure in line with its renewed hope agenda aimed at boosting the economy and addressing key national priorities. Now, according to the president, part of this funding will be directed towards infrastructure development, including support for universal basic education and the establishment of 9 new higher educational institutions. This allocation aims to improve educational facilities and support ongoing efforts to strengthen Nigeria's educational system. Joining us for this conversation is the Educational Director, Camp David Schools, Daniel Ifeanyi. Good morning.
It's good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right. When you heard or read about the 2025 budget having this allocation for the education sector, what was the impression you had? Because the government has said that its focus, one of its priorities for 2025 is education.
Well, looking at the budget, I think this government has shown pragmatic approach towards the education industry. Though the budget is not enough, because if we look at the budget compared to the percentage of the budget to the total budget of 47 trillion, I can tell you this is just 7.5% of the total budget. And I think UNESCO recommended that
10 to 15%
minimum. And we're having 7.5 at 15 to 25%.
Yes.
We have countries in Africa that are doing much more, like Ghana, very close to us here, South Africa, Malaysia. They are doing so much. Looking at the budget itself and the percentage allocated to the education, it is still not enough. Now, we are talking about 9 new universities. How much would be going into infrastructure development from this budget?
Right.
Then, but I think that there's something the government is actually missing, which I believe we need to correct.
Which is?
The education industry. The time has come for us to pay attention to the grassroots. The primary schools, the secondary schools. So the budget allocation to UBEC is very poor. And I believe going forward, government should find a way to improve on the budget.
But there are those who would say, shouldn't the state governments step in?
Yes, I will come to that. You see, the UBEC happened to be a supporting agency. Now, the states, if you look at the structure of the states, there are states that have that their revenue is so poor. And most of these states are where we have the challenges of out of school children. So I think that the federal government needs to do more through UBEC to supporting those states. You can't compare, look at states in the north, for instance. Let me give you a little breakdown of some of the budgets that we've had. I think the best budget we have had in terms of the allocation to the education sector was 2014, to be honest with you. That budget provided 9.94% to the education industry. And we saw what was done. We saw the establishment of Amajiri schools in the northeast, the north. And this was specifically channeled into mitigating or reducing out of the children.
Did they really take advantage of it?
Yes, we did.
Because there were talks about the fact that those schools were abandoned.
That was after that administration. But these schools were constructed and we saw massive enrollment of children. Now, if we are focused, if the government of the day is paying attention to the tertiary education, to technical education, okay, I don't even know the allocation to technical education in the first place, but I feel that this budget is paying more attention to tertiary institutions. And my second fear is this: as laudable as the allocation is, I also have this fear of how much eventually gets to the schools.
Right. Okay. So we will take everything, one after the other, and that is also something that we really need to talk about. But in the meantime, you started off saying the government took a pragmatic approach,
yes.
But then you've also expressed concern. So help us to clarify that position when you also look at the several sectors that are begging for urgent attention, security, infrastructure. There's also the portion health. There's also the portion of debt servicing and all of that, defense, and so much more. In terms of whether the government has the resources to give the needed attention to education, speak to that, please.
The education sector should be the driver of the whole economy. If there is any sector that should be given priority, best attention should be the education industry. Now, why I said this particular government has taken some pragmatic approach. Last year they started with NEL Fund, providing students loan, and by record, I think over 800 something billion has been disbursed to 300,000 students. Although, now when we get to the facts, we'll be able to prove that. But that's why I said they have taken some pragmatic approach. And the government, the Tinubu administration, I know, is someone that that is actually very sensitive when it comes to the education sector. He did that in Lagos State when he was governor. So I believe that he's definitely focused in changing the tides in the education industry. However, I have very serious concerns because there is one thing to approve a budget. There's another thing, the other thing there is implementation. How will this budget be implemented so that we'll be able to see the impact
tangibly
of the budget in the education sector?
Isn't that the rule? That's going to be the rules of the MDAs, the appropriate MDAs.
If this MDA, if the MDA, it's still under this administration. So the government of the day need to probably put some structures in place.
Like
monitoring and evaluation. How are these funds being used? How have they been used? How do we measure the impact of these funds? Because you see, this sector this education sector, I feel that it has been abandoned for a long time, and a lot is, if we don't get it right, all that we are budgeting to other sectors, we won't be able to see the impact as well, because the education industry, the educational sector, is actually the bedrock. If we don't have our quality education, how much is being sent to research and trainings? How much do we have there? No, we have not seen the breakdown of the implementation. So that's why I wouldn't want to be hasty in concluding. So, but we need to pay attention to research and training. As much as we want to build infrastructure, we need to have people, the human capital development, that would be channeled into every other sector, the health, the defense, and other sectors.
Again, I come to this matter of, can the federal government do it alone? There has to be some level of contribution from the state governments. Okay. We can't keep saying that the state governments, their revenue is little, they receive allocation from the federal government. How are they also, judiciously expending that on issues that matter to the people and their estates. Those are critical. So I think that there has to be some balance with regards to how we approach these things. Don't you think?
Yes, I think that I wouldn't want to hold sway for any state government, but I believe that the 36 state governors are doing the best they can do with the available resources and the allocation. But I think they will need to do more. They just need to do more. Let's look at the local government, the local government areas. Now, if there's already a bill passed now that, or the local government have autonomy, what area of education is the local government councils taking care of? The state government.
Some of them are to pay teachers' salaries and also.
At what level? Now,
that's
you have
primary school. None of that.
Okay, good. Now, if resources are properly distributed from the local government to the states and they are judiciously managed, we should see the impact. We should. But I think the one missing thing, we have a fantastic curriculum in this country.
Do we?
We do. The current curriculum provides for trade subjects, provides for skill acquisition. But my dear, how many of these facilities do we have in the primary school, in the secondary school? If we don't get it right at this level, we'll just keep on pushing thousands, hundreds of students to the universities, and the university will also turn them out
back into
the society. I don't want to use the wrong words, but I have been I've been opportune to have discussion, conversations with a lot of our graduates, and I can tell you, out of 100, you would be so sorry to find out that we might not be able to boast over 50% of our graduates that can fit into the economy to transform this nation.
But on the other hand, we also see our youth who go abroad to further their education, excelling.
What is the percentage?
Excelling. Okay, so
what is the percentage?
So you feel that, but how then do you marry that with your assumption or assertion that there's nothing wrong with the curriculum?
Yes. I talk about the implementation. We have a fantastic curriculum. And by those who put this curriculum together, I believe what they wanted to achieve is to have an educational system from the primary school where a child learns the theory, learns practical. Now, and when the child is coming out of school, he has not just theoretical knowledge, he has something he can do with his hands.
So that is
not
missing.
Everybody should go to the university.
So that is missing. You believe
that is what is missing. That is exactly what is missing.
Because we do not have the right infrastructure.
We don't have the right infrastructure.
Right.
Even within, I have been to so many public schools. I've been to so many public schools. Now, if we can get this right, if the state governments will begin to pay attention to these areas, I can tell you, not everybody needs to go to university. Then the infrastructure we have in the university will be able to cater for the number.
What about the intervention by the private sector? And the governments have also, done that. Or the federal government, the president has also spoken about, private sector intervention.
Yes.
We look in Lagos, we look elsewhere, private options appear to be the way to go, even though we have the public school education, yes. But, we've also spoken about the challenges. How will you measure the impacts that the private school option has given Nigerians?
The private schools are also challenged in terms of funding. We have over hundreds of thousands of private schools in Nigeria. Lagos alone have more than over 10,000 plus. I don't have my figures, but I can tell you that out of these numbers, you can barely get 30% of the schools that have the resources. Most private schools are struggling. I can tell you with the current economy, a lot of private school owners are even considering quitting. So this section alone, the number of students that left the private schools to the public school has doubled. So, for the government to, I know the government cannot rely so much on the private sector, because what leverage are you giving the private sector to be able to make impact? What leverage are you giving the private school?
So, are you saying there has to be some leverage?
There should be some leverage.
Like what?
There should be a system or a place where the private schools can access funds at a single-digit interest rate. There are many of these. The private schools can drive the education sector, especially on this aspect of vocational and skill training and all that. They can do it. Starting with my school, I have so much to do, but the funding is the issue. What we wanted to do in our own school, in our own cases, now, we want to make sure that every child, before a child finishes senior secondary school, you must be able to have at least one skill that you have learned, that you can convert to wealth.
Right.
So the private schools also need intervention.
Right. Okay, so let's also look, you spoke earlier on about the NEL Fund, scheme. I don't think you also expatiated on it. There are some people who say, should we give it directly to the students? Should we give to the parents? Or do we even make it free, just like it was done, decades ago? What are your thoughts about that intervention? How much of a progress are we making with that?
Honestly, as much as I laud the government for that intervention, I still have my reservations. This is a loan to the students. Who pays the loan? I feel that this should be in form of grants to students. Not loan. Place that kind of burden on the future leaders.
Well, when they have the capacity to pay, they pay back.
When they have
of course, because you graduate and it's expected they get a job.
If they don't get a job?
Well, you should have something doing. You get yourself engaged with something that brings in money as regularly as you can. Now, that is supposed to be the way you are expected to pay back.
Anyway, I have not really taken my time to look at the terms and conditions of that loan, because I told my younger ones in school, don't beg. I am funding the education. I don't think they need a loan. Okay. Right. So, but for as many that are going through that route, I pray in the nearest future they'll be able to pay the loan and there won't be any issues coming out from that intervention that will affect their future.
Okay. Like you rightly mentioned earlier on, that the judicious use of this allocation for the education sector will go a long way at the results we get at the end of the day. So we have to leave the conversation here. Daniel Ifeanyi, Educational Director, Camp David Schools, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Well, this is where we draw the curtains on the program for today. Let's let you know that the views and reactions of all our resource persons are there.